Dear Vitalis, you are young and I am much older. One of the great messages of Pope Francis in Rio de Janeiro just this past week was that the Church needs both young people and older people. It needs young people because they have the energy to do so much and to carry out the mission of the Church into the future with enthusiasm and great vigour. But the Church also needs older people because they have the wisdom that comes from striving to be faithful to Jesus Christ over many years. If the old and the young in the Church work together, and of course everybody in between, then the Church will become that lamp shining before the world about which Jesus spoke in the Gospel. The Church will become the salt of the earth, so that it is attractive to those who do not know Jesus. So tonight, Vitalis, I would like to share a few of my thoughts with you, and I hope that they are wise. You're going to be ordained a deacon tonight, Vitalis. One of the other great messages of Pope Francis that he gave in his very first words to those gathered in St. Peter's Square and in his discussions with journalists after his election are very important for us to reflect upon this evening. He said he wanted a church of the poor, for the poor. In those few words, he challenged everybody in the Church, and especially those in leadership, to ask themselves not just whether we are serving the poor and reaching out to help change our world so that people will not be mired in poverty, but also whether we ourselves are living lives that are literally poor, or at least simple and unadorned, and certainly not ones of luxury. He particularly challenged priests and religious in this regard. He even suggested, for example, that where it is possible, we give up our cars and use bicycles. He went on to say he understands many of us have to have cars, but he said, not the latest model, please. In our Catholic tradition, a deacon has always been considered as having a special calling to serve the poor. It is not a calling that he does not share with the rest of the Church, but he must have it as a central part of his ministry, which is described as a ministry of the Word, of the sacraments or the altar, and of charity, which is always a service to the poor. Your diaconate, Vitalis, will be transitional. It's not meant to be your permanent ministry, but rather a ministry you exercise on the way to ordination to priesthood. But the characteristics of diaconate, being a deacon, do not cease with ordination to priesthood. They carry through into priesthood. So let me say this, Vitalis. If you are not a good deacon, you cannot, without great difficulty, be a good priest. If as a deacon you do not have a heart for the poor, then you will not have a deacon's heart to carry into the priesthood, so that you could become a priest without a heart for the poor. Likewise, if you are not a deacon who is happy to live simply and in an unadorned way, you will not be a priest who is willing to live simply and not to seek for luxury. Throughout your ministerial life, and this I hope is my wisdom, throughout your ministerial life, you'll be tempted to work with those whom you like, or with those with whom you find your work easy. You'll be tempted to work with those who are constantly encouraging you by their enthusiasm for what you're saying or doing, or simply your manner of going about your ministry. Let me warn you that there is a temptation in there to seek for comfort in your ministry, to seek for praise in your ministry, and to end up ministering only to those who perhaps need your ministry less than others. There's also a counter tendency in us to avoid those who are demanding, or those who ask us to help them to carry a burden that we don't want to carry or we don't know how to handle. We are tempted to avoid situations or problems or dealing with issues that we know will be difficult to solve or that may be beyond our strength. We are tempted to avoid those we find unlovely and to seek the lovely, to avoid those we find unattractive and to cherish the attractive, to avoid those we find boring and to accompany only the interesting. We are tempted to avoid those who make us sad and to seek the company only of those who make us happy. This is the effect of sin within us, and it is something we have to fight against all our lives. The fact that we have these temptations is not a sign that there is something particularly damaged about us. It is a universal conflict in the life indeed of every human being. The deacon and the priest are called, first of all, to work with those they may see as unlovely, unattractive, demanding, boring, or difficult, and those above all who are poor. In our country, that does not always mean financial poverty, though it means it more than our society, I think, is prepared to admit. It can be spiritual poverty, cultural poverty, it can be physical poverty, it can be educational poverty, social poverty, intellectual poverty, emotional poverty, or health poverty. It can be any number of ways in which human beings find themselves falling behind the others, or outside the inner circle, or unable to keep up, or always overlooked. They are our first priority. That is what a deacon knows, and a good deacon who knows that will become a priest who knows that. It's also a challenge for a diocese and a parish to look at its priorities, to see whether we reach out to those who find it hard to be included, or simply stay in the comfortable world of those who want to be included. I confess that we have failed in this regard, but I rejoice and give thanks to God that sometimes we've succeeded. You are young, Vitalis, but put your energy in the right direction, not just where you will feel good. Give all that you have with all your heart so that others may feel good because of what you do and who you are. To do what I am suggesting, Vitalis, is to experience the cross so that you and those you serve may experience the resurrection. Every ordination, therefore, involves in some ways a crucifixion. Welcome to the cross, Vitalis. It is where you will find life and happiness, as we, soon to be your brothers in ordained ministry, have found our life and our happiness.